right, friends, happy Monday. So everybody, we are on, I guess you could call this the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We're on West 61st Street. It is Monday, and some pretty big news. Obviously, everybody probably knows the news. So Twitter, the board at Twitter, successfully accepted Elon Musk's offer to purchase Twitter. So this is pretty interesting, and I think it's going to be good, right? I think there's a lot of sort of emotions out there right now in relation to the deal. But I guess tonight, what I really wanted to talk about is, politics aside, is this going to be a good thing for Twitter from an operations standpoint? And we've been talking about this almost ad nauseum on the stream as of the past couple weeks. And just to ingest, I think it's going to be a pretty good move for Twitter. I think that the platform is going to improve. You guys know my take that I think Twitter is the standalone social media platform that users could actually get the most value out of, from not only an educational standpoint, but also from a creative standpoint. So we'll talk about Twitter tonight. We'll cover everything. We'll also cover some of these statements made by Jeff Bezos, sort of taking a shot at Elon Musk, alluding to the fact that the Chinese may be, could potentially have an upper hand in the deal now that Elon Musk owns Twitter. I think that Jeff Bezos is a little bit butthurt about it, but we'll talk about that and more tonight. Let's see who we have in the chat. Hey, we have Soho guys here. Ibrahim Azam, Shauno is here, 007. Good to see everybody. Tiffany Allen says hi. Chris Beeman, good to see you, Chris. Hemp Lord is here, says what's up, Tom. Modentana says hello from Montana. Michelle K says, hey Tom, how are you? I'm doing really good. NMB045 says, hi Tom G. I wonder what the main topic is going to be tonight. I know. Crazy. Solo401 says, Elon wasted $44 billion. Good to see you, Solo. Samantha R is here. Michelle Denny. Faith. Good to see you, Faith. Vinny Castellano. Thank you so much for joining. Vinny is joining us from the one and only Staten Island. Good to see you. Judy D is here. Lay the welcome. Ruby Falcone, Matthew P. Good to see everybody in sunshine after rain. And I see Mark Davis says, good evening there, Tom. Hope all is well with you. Hello from Toronto. Good to see you, Mark. So we're here at Columbus Circle. Very seldom do we come up here. So I'm actually pretty excited we were able to get up to Columbus Circle tonight. So we are walking around Central Park. This is actually the Trump International Hotel at 1 Central Park West. But if we turn around here, this building right here is actually even more famous. It's called 15 Central Park West, and it is one of the most exclusive buildings or addresses here in New York City. I think Lloyd Blankenfein at one time lived here, as well as Alex Rodriguez. Really, really beautiful building, 15 Central Park West. I do apologize, everybody. We do not have the microphone for tonight, so we are going to be experiencing some wind noise. Hey, Samantha R says, Tom, I'm pretty excited. We're up on this side, too. Good to see you, Samantha R. Eyeglass Lady's here. Good to see you, Eyeglass Lady. British Gray is joining us from the one and only Tampa, Florida. Roy S. Welcome, everybody. So obviously the big news of the day is that Elon Musk did purchase Twitter. And, we were talking about this a lot. And I think I don't think there's any, I guess we could say, any benefit that comes out of trying to make this political. And I think a lot of people are trying to make it political, and I think that it doesn't really make any sense to do that. So what we've been talking about on the streams is saying, look, we know that Twitter has a ton of potential, but shareholders have not been, garnering as good of returns as they have if you invested in Facebook or another social media platform, obviously. So I think Twitter is a very, very unique social media platform. Number one, I think it is the only social media platform that allows the average person to actually have an open conversation. It could be a president of the United States. It could be a president of El Salvador. It could be a CEO of a big company, right? So I think Twitter is really the only, I guess you could call it a medium of exchange, where you could exchange ideas back and forth, and the odds of a big CEO or a big executive actually seeing your tweets and responding to them are actually quite high. You can't really say the same thing about Facebook. You can't say the same thing about Snapchat. And you really can't, obviously, you can't say the same thing about IG. So I think that's what's really the value proposition of Twitter, is that you don't necessarily need to be a well-known person. You could just create a Twitter account off the rip, have 0 followers, and then start engaging with executives at companies, start engaging with hedge fund managers, start engaging with your favorite artists or musicians. And there's a pretty good chance you're gonna garner a response. So I think that, for me anyway, is probably the biggest benefit to Twitter, because if we're talking about free speech, the way I like to talk about free speech is not, people are getting shadow banned and people are getting taken down and deplatformed. I don't really like to think about it that way. The way I like to think about it is the access to information and the access to different ideas. And I think Twitter is pretty much the only platform you could do that. But I want to know you guys' thoughts. What do you think about this Twitter acquisition from Elon Musk? And what do you think about Jeff Bezos throwing in his 2 cents and saying that the acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk could potentially put the Chinese government into an upper hand against the United States? I think that was uncalled for, but I want to know your guys' thoughts. Hey, Faith says, wow, 44 mils for Twitter, $1 billion. I think he paid 44 billion. So I think the main financial advisor on the deal is Morgan Stanley, but I think Goldman Sachs is involved there as well. Yeah, Latha says it's potentially just billionaires being narcissistic. Perhaps, potentially. Ibrahim Azan says, I joined Twitter a few days ago, so I guess I did it at the right time. Dutchman is here. Dogman says, Twitter is great. I hope the changes are minimal beyond the censorship issues. I think the terms of service are fine. Yeah, I agree. I think my biggest critique of Twitter, I think for the individual creator, let's say, and let's try to not even take it from a financial standpoint, because I know I always talk about, from a perspective of finance, but let's say if you're an artist, let's say if you're a musician or something like that, and you want to share your work with people who have the same interests in you that you have, Twitter it's good for an exposure standpoint, but I guess it could be a little bit better in terms of monetization. Because if we think about the implications of like an Instagram, where it's a little bit better to drive consumers to e-commerce landing pages and things like that, I think if Twitter can incorporate something like that to, I guess, give an incentive of more individual creators, and it could be small businesses, small to medium-sized businesses, not only B2C to business to consumer, but also business to business, I think that is just going to totally revolutionize Twitter. So I love the platform of how it's all text and you could read threads and things like that. But I think one of the biggest changes they should potentially make at Twitter is giving like a specific landing page for small businesses where you could check out, different products and services in video format or in photo format. I think that's probably my biggest takeaway for sure. But here's Columbus Circle, everybody. I just want to give you a view of some of the best buildings in the city. Hey, Tin Man says, good to see you back in New York City, Tom. Good to see you, Tin Man. Hemp Lord says, Jeff Bezos is just a hater. Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit uncharacteristic of Jeff to say something like that, because at the end of the day, it's not like Jeff Bezos doesn't own a big media platform, right? I mean, he bought the Washington Post. Dutchman says, Tom, Kevin O'Leary says Elon Musk should fire everybody at Twitter and reboot. Yeah, I did hear about that. I don't know if I agree with Kevin O'Leary per se, but I do see where he's coming from. I think from a standpoint of returning value to shareholders, I think Twitter's done a horrible job, and that really has to play in with the monetization. Chris Hensley is here. Good to see you, Chris. So this building right here is 220 Central Park South, but if you look directly behind that building, that is the brand new Central Park Tower, which is one of my favorite buildings in all of Billionaires Row. It's a beautiful night out here in Manhattan, probably about 55 degrees. Not too cold, not too hot. Let's venture into Central Park a little bit. We'll check it out, Central Park at dusk. Roy S says Twitter is powered by Tesla's batteries. Interesting, hilarious. James says it isn't worth 44 billion. Yeah, so James, they definitely paid a premium. Elon Musk definitely paid a premium for that company, so it was definitely probably just out of a fiduciary responsibility. You have to entertain the deal at least, right? And that's sort of what we were talking about last week, that you have to do the right thing for the shareholders, and ultimately they did when Elon essentially had funding secured for the company. Hey, Matthias, is New York City dangerous right now? Not, I mean, I think it's going to get better. I think it's getting better. Hey, John is here. Says, hope all is well, Tom. Good to see you. Sarah G. Welcome, Sarah. Check out all of these buildings on Billionaires Row. Fantastic. Hey, Herbert is here. Says, Jeff Bezos should focus on his own company and create a climate where people don't feel the need to unionize. Ooh, that's actually a really good comment. That's actually a really, really good comment. And thank you for the $5 donation. Much appreciated. Yeah, so to Herbert's point, let's touch on that a little bit because I think it's relevant to the Twitter talk tonight. So I believe it was in Staten Island, a major Amazon distribution center or warehouse. They did vote to unionize, and I believe actually Bernie Sanders flew in specifically for the event. Yeah, so I think you're right. So I guess it's one of those things like, you know, don't throw stones unless you have your own house in order or something like that, which I agree with. But then again, I mean, I'm so surprised that Jeff said that, right? Essentially what Jeff Bezos was saying, he's like, look, China has big investments in Tesla. Obviously, Elon Musk just built that brand new Shanghai Gigafactory, which is pretty controversial, right? Being that Shanghai is now on lockdown, there's been reports of actual Tesla employees having to sleep on the factory floor. But I'm not too sure Elon Musk controls any of that. But at the same time, you know, you could say the same thing about Amazon delivery drivers, right? So maybe it's one of those things, to Herbert's point, you know, don't cast stones at Elon Musk when you could fix things internally your own company at Amazon. You know, I think it's more of a sort of like a power grab type thing, and Jeff Bezos is so used to having the spotlight on him all the time. So potentially he is not too happy that over the past 2 months, everything has just been talking about Elon Musk and Tesla, and especially now with this Twitter thing. But here's something I wanted to ask the group. Because I think this is pretty interesting. You're seeing a lot of people on both the right and the left criticize Elon Musk and saying it is dangerous for a billionaire to own a media platform because it could hinder democracy and free speech. Now, I'm open to the discussion. I just am oblivious as to how you connect those dots. Because if you think about it, Facebook is owned by Mark Zuckerberg, billionaire. Mark Benioff, which is actually the CEO of Salesforce, he just bought Time magazine. And Jeff Bezos, which was the former richest man on earth before Elon Musk came into play, he bought the Washington Post. So I don't understand this argument that they're making it out to seem like this is totally new. This has never happened before, where a billionaire owns a media agency. Because, I mean, newsflash, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Mark Benioff owns Time magazine. So, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's just because Elon Musk is trending in the news and, you know, it's sort of like the first person who's trending in the media, everybody tries to attack? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Yeah, Ibrahim Azam says, definitely, Tom. I don't understand it either. Sarah G says, great views. Good to see you. Welcome. Michael says, they already censor anything Republican. A different take says it's dangerous for any one person to have too much power. Interesting. Soho guys says, Tom, Mark Bezos, both liberals, so no blowback. Okay, so maybe you think it's interesting. D says, hi, Tom. Are you licensed Series 7 or 63? I am not. I work in enterprise tech sales. Layla says, maybe it's just billionaire ego battles. Potentially. So speaking of billionaires, everybody, we are standing in Central Park, and we have a beautiful view of Billionaires Row. Now, talking about a fellow billionaire right here. The top of this tower is actually where Citadel Securities' Ken Griffin lives. And it's funny because thinking about Twitter and talking about Twitter, a couple months ago, on Twitter, there was a movement called Let's Buy the Constitution. So if anybody's familiar with the Ethereum network or the Ethereum blockchain, essentially a group of Twitter activists created what's called a DAO in order to raise money to buy the US Constitution. They almost did it if it wasn't for this guy who lives at the very top of this tower. Ken Griffin from Citadel actually outbid all of these cryptocurrency or cyberpunks on the internet to buy the Constitution. A little bit of a bummer, but I just think that's another, an example of just how powerful Twitter is, right? All of this started over people chattering and exchanging ideas on Twitter. The next thing you know, they create a DAO, which is essentially a way to raise money via smart contract to buy the US Constitution, only to be outbid by the one and only Ken Griffin from Citadel Securities. Hey, Ali Star says, hello, Tom. I just jumped on. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. I'll show you guys one of the horses here in Central Park. Hey, Charlie Richardson is jumping on. Good to see you. Jack says, wow, the US Constitution is for sale. Yeah, Jack, good to see you, my friend. Matthias says, do you think Baruch College is a good university? I think it's a fantastic university. I think for the price, it's probably the best value, especially if you want to work on Wall Street or something like that. Bernard Baruch was one of the best financiers in history. Jose says, Twitter censors independent, libertarian, and conservative views. Yeah, so that has been the narrative, right? And not to pick a side, I like to be sort of very open-minded on the stream, but a lot of the blowback has been towards censoring, the right or the libertarians. But then at the same time, more progressives, remember that big battle that was going on with the Young Turks? And I'm just trying to give two sides of the perspective here. I'm not saying if I agree with it or not, but there was a time where the Young Turks were having a lot of their content being taken down. And if anybody is familiar with the Young Turks, they are sort of like this very progressive, almost like uber progressive. I wouldn't really call them Democrats because they're not. They're more progressive liberal. A lot of their content was being taken down too. So it seems like any content that is really, really controversial, usually that is the particular type of information that is being targeted for censorship. I think with Elon Musk at the realm, here's a good idea. Here's what I think that could probably solve a lot of that stuff. Because essentially Twitter is a big algorithm. And the algorithm will automatically feed you the content that you usually associate with. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'll give you an exact example in my life. So I tend to be more conservative libertarian. So all of my Google News feeds, all of my Twitter feeds, it tends to send me or show me the content of people who have similar viewpoints to me. Now, that's both a good and a bad thing. Here's why it is a good thing, and then I'll also tell you why it's a bad thing. The reason why it's a good thing is because it helps you get around like-minded people, and like-minded people tend to work better on different projects and things like that with each other. But here's the bad news. Here's why it's bad. Oftentimes, that can create your own little bubble, and I don't think it's healthy to only associate with people that view things the exact same way you do, right? I think that's a little bit too easy, if you know what I mean. So if everybody that I interact with every day thinks exactly like me, dresses exactly like me, has the same goals and aspirations as me, I think that can create a pretty, I don't want to say polarizing, but I think maybe just a very biased life, right? A very biased life, keeping me in my own little bubble. So here's one of the solutions that I see via Twitter that could sort of solve that. And I think that'll solve a lot of the free speech issues, because I think a lot of times when people want to censor something, both censoring the left and the right, they want to censor things that they're not familiar or comfortable with those ideas, right? So I think a lot of the times when people want to censor something, it's because they're not comfortable with an idea or familiar with an idea. And the way the social media algorithms and the YouTube algorithms are programmed is they feed you more of the content that associates with you. So having the Twitter algorithm be open sourced, where anybody could make changes and keep checks and balances in order, I think that will at least help a lot of those problems go away by making the algorithm open sourced. So what are you guys' thoughts on that? Are you for an open sourced algorithm? Are you not? And what do you think about sort of my take about living in your own little ecosphere? Hey Latha, good to see you. Sarah G says, yes Tom, I agree, the unknown is quote unquote scary. Sinjib, good to see you, welcome. Sarah G says, I think people need to adapt and understand. So here's my old building. Latha says, Tom, it's an ideological bubble, and that is never good. I agree with that. Hey, Michelle Denny says, the censorship also has to do with folks making very offensive comments, says Michelle. D says, do you think it's a conflict of interest for Fed officials or politicians to own stocks or have insider information on economic policy? So D, I do. So we've talked about this a lot, and I think it's good to touch on. I think if you are a public servant, either in Congress or the Senate or whatever, if let me rephrase that. If you are actively either making laws, signing them into law, or have the ability to talk to industry executives, whether that be, for example, in the cybersecurity space, in the tech space, in the manufacturing space, if you have readily available access to policy changes, you should not be able to own or trade individual stocks. And I'll give you an example of that. So the Biden administration actually did something I agree with. They increased the overall government spending on cybersecurity software tools. I actually agree with that. I think that's a very good idea. I think that's something very good that the Biden administration did. And you guys know me, I tend to lean more conservative, but I'm always fair. I give credit where credit's due. I think that was an extremely wise choice by the Biden administration to start taking cybersecurity more seriously. But here's the thing. Then you look back, all the Republican congressmen, all the Democratic congressmen and congresswomen started buying call options on CrowdStrike, Zscaler, and all these other cybersecurity companies because they knew that they were going to enact a policy to increase cybersecurity spending. Now, this is all allegedly, so I don't get sued. But to your point, if you're making policy, you're signing into law, yeah, let's increase government spending on cybersecurity software, and then the next second you log into your Charles Schwab brokerage account and you buy a bunch of cybersecurity stocks, I think that's unethical. Some people may disagree, but that's my viewpoint. I think that's unethical because you have information that the public doesn't. CWG, good to see you. Says lots of great things the Biden administration is doing. Good to see you, CWG. Santos' beautiful view. Good to see you, Santo. Arturo Flores, what's up, Tom? Good to see you. So these two buildings right here used to be the Time Warner Centers, but now they're actually called the Deutsche Bank Towers. Andrew says they should only be able to buy index funds. Yeah, so that is my view. I think they should be able to either dollar cost average into an index that tracks the S&P 500 or the Dow, because that is a very diversified investment, right? So even though the index may own particular cybersecurity companies, and this is just one example, it's usually not going to move the needle as much as to, you know, if before the market opens, you have big news coming across the Bloomberg terminal, Biden administration is going to invest an extra $45 billion in cybersecurity protocols, and Zscaler and CrowdStrike are all up 20%, pre-market. And then you look at the insider filings and you see that, Pelosi is long a bunch of call options. And it's not just from the left. It's everybody. It's on the right and the left that are doing it. I think it's unethical. I don't think they should be able to trade common stock I mean, let alone derivatives trading. You know, a lot of these politicians are going into the derivatives market and trading extremely high leveraged products, which I think is horrible. Yogi, good to see you. Welcome. Jose says, hello, Tom. Where are we walking today? So this is Central Park South. 59th Street, Central Park South. We haven't been here in a long time. But this is the Park Lane Hotel, which actually was closed down for about 6 months. But they totally redid the entire inside of this hotel. So complete gut renovation. And I actually stayed here one time before the renovations, but it looks brand new on the inside. It looks beautiful. Hey, Dogman says, yes, highly inappropriate insider trading at a very clear level. I agree, Dogman. Paul says the cybersecurity is good pay for the company. Yeah, I think cybersecurity has an ever-expanding total addressable market for sure. Hey, Dwayne says, greetings from Edmonton, Alberta. Welcome. Good to see everybody from Alberta, Canada. John says, thank you, Tom. Good to see you. D says, totally agree. BA says, hi, Tom. Beautiful views and be well. Thank you. Much appreciated. Charlie Richardson says, Tom, it really amazes me that you can create a company and have it bought for a lot of money. Yeah, well, I mean, going back to Twitter, Elon Musk offered them a pretty good deal, right? He actually paid up a premium valuation for that company. Many analysts on Wall Street think that Twitter, where it was trading at before the acquisition, was even overvalued. But I think we're going to hear more clarity about it this week because Twitter is actually reporting earnings. So I was talking about this with one of my friends today. You know, for Twitter to accept the deal, for Twitter to accept Elon Musk's deal, earnings must have been looking pretty bad. Earnings must have been looking really bad. Matthias says, hello from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Love Fort Lauderdale. Absolutely love Fort Lauderdale. Eyeglass Lady says, yes, Tom, I agree. It's unethical for politicians to trade common stock. So isn't there a bill that is in place, or at least going through Congress, I think, to prevent them from trading individual securities? James says, Twitter's earnings are out Thursday. Watch the market tank. They're so bad. Yeah, well, I mean, now I guess Twitter is going to be a private company now, so it'll no longer be publicly traded. Miami Walking and Driving Tours is part of the timing right before earnings, I'm sure. Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, and here's another thing. So if we're talking about the operations of the business, right? So I want to sort of get into the deal from an operations standpoint. So if we think about, I mean, how long has Twitter been a publicly traded company? I mean, for quite a long time. If you look at the stock price of Twitter, so if you type in TWTR in Google, the stock price has been sideways for, I think, 9 years. And if we look at the revenue and if we look at the earnings, well, it has no earnings. Well, it is profitable, but very little. And revenues, you know, it hasn't grown as fast as like a Facebook or something like that. And I think that's because they've done a very poor job of monetizing, as we've said. But I think that now that Twitter will be a private company as opposed to a publicly traded company, it's going to be much easier for Twitter to make adjustments to the algorithm, adjustments to the platform, and executive decisions, because you don't have to worry about, you know, earnings. You don't have to worry about hitting numbers for Wall Street. So usually when a company becomes public, operations tend to change, and you can sometimes, I'm not going to say all the time, but sometimes management will be very short-sighted in order to quote unquote appease Wall Street. Because when you're a publicly traded company, you will have, you know, stock analysts from all the major investment banks cover your particular company, and they'll assign targets, revenue metrics, earnings metrics, things like that. So a lot of the times there could be some, I guess, not so good decisions for the long term just to appease Wall Street and hit a metric. than actually taking a long-term approach for the business. So I think that now that Twitter is going to be a private company, I think that they can focus on actually making some concrete changes to the platform. And I think the biggest thing that I'm excited about is making the algorithm open source. And I think that's going to essentially rid all of the cognitive biases of just having the algorithm throw what you want to hear in your face, right? So I think it's going to open up the market for free speech, not only from a standpoint of, oh, I'm getting shadow banned or something like that, but maybe your news feed and Twitter will be, fed with something, some ideas that you don't agree with. So you get accustomed to those, right? Instead of just hearing from the same 5 people that the algorithm always recommends. But what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about an open source algorithm as opposed to having it behind closed doors, feeding your biases? Hey, Carl is here. What's up, Carl? Good to see you. So we are now standing right outside of the Plaza Hotel. But this big building here, we're actually looking at 432 Park Avenue. And I believe one of the units in this building just sold over the weekend for $80 million. And I think a family that actually owned 2 of the lower units actually bought it too. So I think now they own multiple units in the building. Hey, Day's Work is here. Good to see you, Day's Work. Hope your week was off to a good start. Carl says, I love open source. I use open source Linux on my desktop. Yeah, D's like Linux instead of Windows. Yeah, exactly. Hey, War Walker's here. Good to see you. Welcome, everybody. We're here once again at Central Park South. The Mighty Bull is here. Good to see you, Mighty Bull. Always a pleasure. XOXX Bob is in the house joining us. Leda says, I like open source, like Google products. I mean, I think it's an interesting concept for a social media company, right? Because, I mean, I even catch myself, right? And I try to be as open-minded as possible. I think I've been working on that over the past 5 years because I've noticed it in my own life. Like, Google will track my search history and understand that I'm always looking up finance and, Investors Business Daily, Barron's. So it feeds me people that tend to be more on the conservative side, right? Because if you're looking up, the stock market and podcasts about, how to raise money and things like that, those people that tend to look that stuff up tend to lean a little bit more conservative. I'm not saying everybody does, but I've noticed that. I'm like, how come my feed is filled with like the same 5 people or the same 10 people, right? And I think that can create like your little bubble. And I think that's very dangerous. I think that's very dangerous because anytime you hear an idea that's outside of your little bubble, you freak out, you flip out. And I think that's what's happening with all of this cancel culture now, is because we have been so programmed by these algorithms to only consume data and information that conforms with our narrative, that anytime we hear something from an opposing side, both left and right, we flip out, we freak out, and we call for everybody to be canceled. And I think that's probably not the best, healthiest way to go about it for society. Yeah, Caddy says, absolutely, it provides a different take. James says, most people like living in a bubble. Sarah G says, I think it will expand your mind. I agree. Michelle Denny, I think that's a good comment. So Michelle says, Tom, what is your definition of free speech? Saying offensive stuff, racist, bullying, misinformation, etc. gets a free pass, question mark. So I don't think it gets a free pass. So my definition of free speech, so long as it is not directly threatening somebody's life, I think it is a go. And I'll give you an example. We talked about this on a couple of streams before. Sometimes you'll have internet sometimes you'll have content that circulates on the dark web, for example, where you'll have a lot of terrorist organizations or terrorist groups posting beheadings of innocent people online. If you had a platform and said we want total unregulated free speech, technically technically, I guess you could say that could fly. I don't think any of that stuff should fly, obviously. I think anybody with a, you know, with a moral conscience would say that stuff is totally inappropriate to be put on the internet. So I think so long as your speech doesn't have a direct impact to potentially threaten your life physically or somebody else's, it's a go. It's a green light. So, for example, with Trump, you know, they took down Donald Trump. They deplatformed a couple of other, I think of the Young Turks, which is a more left-leaning media company. They took them down for a little bit because they were saying some stuff about Saudi Arabia. That's tough. I mean, just because you say something about Saudi Arabia and maybe you have some vested interest with some investments doesn't mean you could be deplatformed. That type of stuff, I think, is a green light to where you should be able to say anything you want. But what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? Because it is a very fluid and sticky situation, so I'd love to know your thoughts. Please. Let me see. Hey, Explorations, is any call to action is already illegal? Yep. Laytha says, yeah, I don't do Tor. Yeah, that's like Tor. You could buy whatever it's called. Sarah G says, because free market, a different take, says Elon now has become an oligarch. Never mind free speech or not free speech. It's a different take. Melee says, good evening from Scranton, Pennsylvania. And hello, Tom. Good to see you. Welcome. Yeah, Mass says, don't do the dark web. Please, anybody don't do it. Agreed. Michelle says, no, thank you. Words matter too. And should have consequences. I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with that. Because once you say, you know, words matter and it should have consequences, I think it could go down a little bit of a slippery slope there. But I do respect the comment. I respect it, but I'm going to have to respectfully disagree with that. Travis says, looks like a great evening for a walk and some Wall Street. Well, thank you. You know, I'm so happy to be up this way, finally. You know, very seldom ever since I moved, we never get a chance to go up to Central Park South anymore because usually we're either starting the stream off at 34th Street or down in Soho or something like that. And then by the time we get up here, the phone dies. So glad to be back here near Central Park South in the Plaza Hotel. It's one of my favorite spots here. War Walkers is the worst side of humans are in the dark web. Gives you a horrible feeling. I agree. Charlie Richardson says, Tom, now that the platform is under new ownership, do you think Trump would get his account back? So I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. I was reading an article today in CNN Business, and CNBC actually covered this at the closing bell a little bit too, where Donald Trump actually said he doesn't want his account back. And I think that's because he has his own sort of special purpose acquisition company, or SPAC. He's trying to start up his own social media platform, which I don't even know the name of. I haven't even ever been on it. So I think Trump is going to take a stance to say, look, even if he gets his account at Twitter back, you know, wouldn't that technically be a conflict of interest, as in, you know, he's not using his own social media platform that he's trying to start up. I've never used it. And I don't think it's doing too well. I think it has pretty much no people on it. But Social Truth. So Cindy Foley says Social Truth. So Cindy Foley, have you been on Social Truth? I have not been on Social Truth platform. But I know it did go public via SPAC. And I've told everybody, and we've had many streams about this, stay away from all those special purpose acquisition companies. The vast majority of them are just big money grabs. So stay away from all of these SPACs. They are no good, but that is just my opinion. I'm not trying to get anybody in legal trouble, but a lot of these SPACs yeah, we'll just leave it at that. No bueno. Big money grab from Wall Street. Melee says, what do you think of Parler platform? So I've never been on that one either. Here's the only social media platforms I use, just so everybody knows. I'm on Twitter. I think I'm the most bullish And when I say bullish, I'm not bullish on the stock, obviously, because it's going to go private. But I think Twitter has so much potential for the individual creator or the individual person that wants direct access to people that are either CEOs of companies. I don't really know. I don't know the word what to call them. I don't want to call them higher ups, because I really do think everybody is, you know, on the same level and has the same potential. But people you wouldn't normally have access to, right? So back in the day, probably you're not going to have a sit down talk with one of the Rockefellers or something like that. Probably almost impossible. But with Twitter, it's very possible that you could tweet at Elon Musk and he'll respond to you. You could tweet at Bill Ackman and he'll read your tweets, or he'll read your equity research. You know, maybe you tweet at one of your favorite musicians or your favorite artists. I think Twitter has created the only platform where it encourages dialogue as opposed to people throwing up their own content just to be consumed. And that's sort of what really drew me to Twitter, is because not only does the creator have the ability to put something up for others to consume, but it encourages collaboration. It encourages dialogue. And I think if you're a small creator, let's say if you're an artist or you make music, I think it's a very good way to get your, I guess, products and services exposed to more people and networking with people that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. And then I use Instagram not a lot. Hey, we have Queen Bee here. Good to see you, Queen Bee. Good to see you. Jonathan Francis, great news today. Good evening, Tom and company. Good to see you, Jonathan. Chris Mills, good to see you. Melee says freedom of speech. Jonathan Richards says hello, Tom. Good to see you, Jonathan. Always a pleasure to have you here on this Elon Musk acquisition night, Monday. Yeah, so photos from around New York, C-suite people. Let's just say that. Mass says, if you will hide your activity on the internet for any reason by a VPN from a trusted provider. Yep, virtual private networks are very useful. Talvish is here. Good to see you, Talvish. I'm trying to get to everybody's comments. Just please stand by. Joe Hernandez says, Tom, you're right, but say it's your personal opinion. It's my personal opinion. Good to see you, Joe Hernandez. War Walker's like, Tom, did you have a prosperous day? So I did have a prosperous day. I got to be up really, really early tomorrow for some meetings. I'm actually staying in the city tonight. One of my clients was actually nice enough to put me up in a hotel, so I didn't have to travel back to Long Island tonight. Hey, Mohammed is here. What's up, Mohammed? Long time no see, man. Mohammed is joining us from Malaysia. Good to see you. Ruby Falcone says, you were doing fine, Tom. Good to see you, Ruby. Welcome. Hope everybody had a good Monday. Ren 10 says, someone did the math on Elon buying YouTube. He would need $277 billion to buy it. Yeah, I mean, so I actually think YouTube is has done a better job than many of the other, I guess you could call them social media platforms. But maybe, I guess, YouTube shouldn't be considered social media. Maybe, what do you think the technical term for YouTube should be called? Darij says, I was just in Manhattan 3 days and now I'm back in India watching, and this video is a blessing. Hey, thank you. And I hope you had a great time, and I hope you're back safely in India. Thank you for watching. Hey, Rhea says, hello from New York City. Good evening, Rhea. Elliot Wave Review says, I think Twitter, Wikipedia, Facebook, and all the large platforms should have a democratic process where every user gets to vote on whether or not a piece of content gets to stay or not. Thoughts? Yeah, so Elliot Wave Review, I think that goes hand in hand with the open source algorithm, right? I think that goes hand in hand. So I agree with you 100%. So one of the reasons why I was actually in favor of Elon Musk buying Twitter, and let me actually just preface this, I would be in favor with anybody else buying Twitter and changing up the operations, because ever since, and you know, Jack Dorsey, I'm a big fan of Jack Dorsey, but it just wasn't working out. And that just tells it by the Twitter stock price. I mean, Twitter shareholders over the last 9 years have gotten nothing. Literally, factoring in for inflation has gotten nothing. They've done a horrible job of monetizing the platform. And the platform has so much potential. So it could have been any other billionaire, could have been any other collective of people. We just need leadership change in Twitter. So one of the ideas that was most compelling to me is making the Twitter algorithm open source. So I think that sort of goes along a little bit with what you're saying, Elliott Wave Review, of giving the power back to a distributed or sort of decentralized amount of people, right? So it's not just like one king of the castle is giving it a stamp of approval saying you're good to go, you're not good to go. I think if you can have a community decision via open source software, perhaps that'll solve some of the problems. And I'm not saying it's going to solve a lot of the problems. I'm just saying we need to try something different. Hey, Ren10 says, highly recommend YouTube Premium. YouTube is such a joy without the commercials. Yeah, so how much is YouTube Premium, Ren10? Is it like $9.99? Hey, Cosmo Scary, what's up? Good to see you, Cosmo. Welcome. Sarah G says, businesses operate how they can generate a profit. The consumer determines what's okay or not. This is Sarah G. John says, is YouTube changing the name to something else? I don't think so. Joe Hernandez says, YouTube is cable access without the advertisements. Well, I guess YouTube technically has advertisements, right? I mean, that's how YouTube generates the majority of its revenue, is through advertising. And I think they've done a pretty good job with that. Hey, Jonathan Francis, typically a Fortune 500 company, if the CEO is flat, he wouldn't last 3 years, let alone 9. You're right. Hey, Gregory's here. Says, I happily pay YouTube Premium since I use it so much. So it seems like we actually have a lot of people that are YouTube Premium subscribers. So what are the benefits of YouTube Premium? Is it just that there's no ads? Is that the only benefit? Hey, Herbert, thank you so much for the $2 donation. Much appreciated, my friend. You're very kind. Says YouTube Premium is $12.99 monthly. Interesting. I'm seeing a lot of comments about CNN Plus shutting down. So that is right. So CNN Plus is out of here. They are shutting down. So I think they only got about 100,000 paying subscribers. But I think the main reason why it's shutting down is because of all the M&A activity with Discovery. I think just there was too much of a convoluted mess and things just weren't aligned at the right time. So you have different management styles, you have employees leaving, you have a lot of churn. I think it was just a really, really poorly managed launch, and they'll probably wind up doing something else in the future. Gregory says you can do other things like download videos for offline viewing. Ah, very cool. Hey, Robert says, Tom, you could download videos with YouTube Premium as well. Fourth quarter says, I cheese the ads, refreshing the page on Chrome. Santo, good to see ya. DWG says, I haven't seen YouTube ad in a year with ad blockers. So one of the browsers that I actually recommend is called the Brave browser. I'm not sure if anybody has ever heard of the Brave browser. So one of the only reasons why I heard about it is because back in 2017, me and one of my friends, we were, early 2017, we were really getting into the whole cryptocurrency environment. And we were really interested in still own quite a bit of basic attention token, which is essentially one of the platforms that links in with the Brave browser to essentially pay users for their attention. So instead of the other way around, you know, you're on Google search and you're getting served up ads and you get no compensation for it. With the Brave browser, if you choose to see advertisements, you actually get paid in the basic attention token. And I think this is Brendan Eich's project, and Brendan Eich is the creator of JavaScript, the computer programming language. Hey, Talvish says, Walks on Wall Street, I started using Brave browser last year. So it seems like everybody has Brave browser in the chat. So what do you guys think about the Brave browser? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Fourth quarter says, I have Brave. Jonathan Francis, CNN Plus, Trump isn't president anymore, so they don't have any more storyline. Oh my God. Andy S says, I get the same ads for like months now. Good to see you, Andy S. Ed Dunkel says, I have some bats. Very cool. Good to see you, Ed. Carl says, doesn't the Brave browser have an orange lion logo? It does. So indeed it does. Cynthia Beal, good to see you. 007 says it's great. Lay this, I've not tried the Brave browser yet. You should try it. Give it a try and let me know what you think. The only reason why I tried it is because I'm a big fan of Brendan Eich. Again, the creator of JavaScript. So everybody, in honor of Apple's earnings, so Apple is reporting their quarterly earnings this week. We are at the Apple store here on 5th Avenue, but if you look at all these little mushroom type things, if you actually look inside, you could actually see people shopping. Okay, maybe you can. So let's actually go to another one. That didn't prove my point. Okay, you could actually see people shopping, which is actually kind of cool, I think. Very unique design here. Hey, Matt G is here. What's up, Matt? So this Apple store is actually open 24/7, which is so unique. I don't think there's any other Apple store that is open 24/7, and they keep it so clean. So speaking about unionization, I forget who it was when we first started the stream talking about Twitter. I think it came from the comment. So ever since Elon Musk announced that he has funding secured to buy Twitter, Jeff Bezos came out with a really snarky comment saying that he's against the acquisition because the Chinese government has so much exposure to Tesla, so much exposure to SpaceX, so much exposure to the Boring Company, and now they'll have exposure to a social media platform via Twitter. I think that Jeff Bezos is just a little bit butthurt because if you think about it, I mean, Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post, right? And nobody really complained about that. And so where I was going with that is somebody in the comment section, I forget who it was, said if you think about Jeff Bezos as sort of casting stones at Elon Musk, you know, he should fix the working conditions in some of the Amazon fulfillment centers. And the reason why I mention that is because right here in Staten Island, I think this was yesterday, even Bernie Sanders flew in support of the unionization of a lot of the employees that work at the Amazon facility in Staten Island. So I think Jeff Bezos should sort of mind his own business on this one, in my view. Also, speaking of Apple, there's actually a couple locations, Apple Store locations in New York City, where the employees are actually thinking of unionizing as well. So we're seeing a really, really interesting seismic shift here in relation to labor unions in the United States. So pretty interesting to see how this one's going to play out. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think of the unionization of Amazon and potentially Apple? What do you think? Yeah, so Caddy says Musk also has his own problems with the Tesla plants. So I think the biggest problems out of the Tesla factories are actually coming out of Shanghai. But I think in all fairness, that is due to COVID. And I definitely do not agree with the lockdowns at all that's going on in Shanghai. But I think you're right. Yeah, Jonathan Francis, true Tom, big news being unionized. Matthias says, do you have to commute to New York City every day? Not every day. Laytha says, unions were once strong in New York and New Jersey. So fun fact, I actually was in a labor union here in New York. I was in the local 1101, which is the Communication Workers of America, right here in New York. Zibatata says, I have Twitter stock. What should I do? Sell now or hold? Well, I think you're going to get bought out at, what was it, $54? I forget what the exact amount was. I think you're going to get cashed out at $54.20. So I think under the terms of the agreement, Twitter stockholders will receive $54.20 in cash for each share of Twitter common stock they own upon closing of the proposed transaction. The purchase price represents a 38% premium to Twitter's closing price on April 1st. And like we were talking about, it's so weird how this played out, because we were talking about this on a couple streams ago, saying that Elon Musk is offering a crazy valuation, but yeah, you're gonna get cashed out and you're gonna probably make a lot of money. So congratulations to you. But no, I do not commute every day. So let's continue on our walk here. I want to walk down Fifth Avenue. Carl says, what is your thoughts on Virgin Galactica stock? Not a big fan of it right now. I'm just really not a big fan of any of the special purpose acquisition companies, to be honest. Let me get a drink of water and we will head out. But everybody, real quick, I will be sending out the Behind the Street newsletter to everybody tomorrow after the market closes. So if you want to if you enjoy sort of the content we're talking about in relation to the equities market, companies going from public to private, if you want to know a little bit more about the bond market, feel free to type !news, NEWS, in the chat and click the link that the Nightbot drops. Punch in your email and you could sign up for a free financial newsletter that I send out to everybody once a week. So let's get some water and I will continue on our walk. Or you could scan the QR code here. So if you scan the QR code, it will take you to the Behind the Street newsletter where you could read all of my work, all of my equity research for free. All right, we got some water. So ever since you guys have been suggesting I take water breaks, usually at the top of the hour. So every hour, usually stream for like 3 hours. So every single hour, I stop for a quick water break. So one more view of Billionaires Row here, and then we will continue on our walk down Fifth Avenue. But from here, you could see the Steinway Building. You could see 157, which is actually Bill Ackman's building. Bill Ackman is a hedge fund manager that owns Pershing Square Investments. And the one with the glowing top right here is actually Central Park Tower, which is my personal favorite, which is the newest addition to Billionaires Row. But now we will continue on our walk down Fifth Avenue. Usually we're walking uptown. Tonight we started our walk from Central Park. Sarah Jesus, stay hydrated. But yeah, just a quick update. I will be sending that out to everybody tomorrow after the market closes, so at 4:30. Make sure you check your inbox, check your spam folders, because the Behind the Street newsletter will be sent right there. Ruby Falcone's like, smart move. You know, I've noticed, Ruby, it definitely gives me more energy on the streams, for sure. So here's the Louis Vuitton store here. Hey, Santo is here. Good to see you, Santo. Faith, hope you're well. Hey, Jonathan Francis Tom, I just finished reading number 19. Thank you, Jonathan. So now that we talked about Twitter a little bit, oh, the investigator says, hey, walks from Wall Street. Hello, my friend. It seems to have been 2 months since the last one. Busy. No, I actually just put one out last week. We're on issue number 21. So the problem I've been having now that we're using Review, I think I'm going to have to migrate over to Substack, because a lot of the Behind the Street newsletters are going to people's spam folders. So you should have gotten issue number 20. So the one that you will be getting tomorrow is issue number 21. But one of the main topics we're going to be talking about in the newsletter is the bond market. So if anybody wants to pull up a multi-decade chart of the 10-year US Treasury yield going back to 1980, it's so interesting. It literally goes from 14% pretty much all the way down to zero ever since the COVID crash here. But one of the things that I find interesting is that we have now rallied. So that 10-year U.S. Treasury yield has now rallied all the way back up to about 2.9%. So if we understand that bond prices move inverse to yields, we can conclude that we've had a pretty aggressive sell-off in the bond market. So huge losses in the bond market. And ever since I was looking at this chart, I was talking about it with one of my good buddies. You know, the narrative right now is that bond yields are going to continue to go up, that 10-year U.S. Treasury yield is going to hit 4%, and everybody's panicking. But if you look at that chart, it almost looks like this is the top for that 10-year U.S. Treasury yield. Now, I'm not calling a top on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have a little bit of pressure on bond yields here. Now, I'm not sure what the catalyst is going to be. Maybe the catalyst is the Federal Reserve is sort of going to back off and they're going to continue to purchase securities, purchase assets, putting pressure on those bond yields. I don't know, but take a look at it. If you go to tradingview.com and you search US 10-year Treasury yield and you zoom out to a monthly view, notice where that yield is coming to right now. Very interesting location. And there's a very high possibility we roll over here and rates will actually continue lower. And the reason why I say that, one of the main reasons, is because if we look at crude oil, if you look at a chart of crude oil, ticker symbol CL, that is the futures contract, the night crude hit about $130 a barrel, I said, okay, that's probably the top, at least if we're not getting close to the top, that's probably the top for crude. And now we're trading, I think, at 96 bucks. And please correct me if I'm wrong, if you guys want to check that out. But I think crude is trading at 96 bucks. Is that correct? And we just broke the 50-day moving average in crude oil. And usually, a peak in the energy sector also will lead yields down a little bit. So I want to get your thoughts on that. And it's very possible we've topped in this oil cycle. It's very possible. Mimi says, Tom, I'm glad I didn't invest in a 60-40 portfolio, but probably getting to the bottom soon. Yeah, so it was interesting. I was listening to Orlando Bravo talk about the outdated 60-40 portfolio. So for those of you who are not familiar with that, essentially a 60-40 portfolio essentially states that, you know, generally speaking, you should probably be 60% in equities and 40% in fixed income or bonds, right? And Orlando Bravo, I actually had the pleasure of sitting front row and center when he was doing his keynote speech at the 2022 Bitcoin conference. And Orlando Bravo owns one of the largest private equity firms in the world, Thoma Bravo, and they only specialize in enterprise software. So Thoma Bravo, I'll show you guys the atrium here. So this is the atrium right outside the Trump Tower. So Thoma Bravo is a private equity firm that specializes in enterprise software. I think they actually just acquired SailPoint, and SailPoint is a cybersecurity company. But he was talking about the outdated 60-40 portfolio because the vast majority of debt around the world is yielding negative returns, factoring in inflation. So if that's the case, you have all of these institutional assets sitting in bonds that are essentially automatically having a negative return. So his point in that was, if we can get approval to invest in alternative assets for an institution, and when I'm talking institution, I'm not just talking about hedge funds and big investment banks. I'm really mainly talking about the big sovereign wealth funds, because that is where the massive amount of money is. So if the point is, if you ever want to have any of these sovereign wealth funds investing in Bitcoin or other sort of digital assets, you're going to need regulatory clarity and regulatory approval to do that. And I think once we do have the regulatory approval, you're going to see some of the money that is allocated to fixed income shift over into digital assets to hopefully generate a little bit more alpha than the dead money that we have in the bond market. Hey Mimi, this is Tom. I listened to Mike Green on risk of passive investments, says Mimi. Could you put the link to that in the chat? I'm gonna take a screenshot, but if you want, you can post it in the Discord as well. Atomic Skittles says, hey Tom, just got in. Were you streaming at Central Park earlier? We were. We were streaming Central Park South. So I want to walk over to 432 Park Avenue because this is the newest, well, I shouldn't say newest, one of the newest buildings here at Billionaires Row. Hey J.A., this is Tom. Would be cool if he made some of the algorithmic decisions based on Twitter polls. That would be funny. You know what? So speaking of algorithmic decisions based on Twitter polls, so when I first started the channel, what I was going to do, but then I decided it was going to be a bad idea, and I think it's actually maybe illegal. I'm not sure. I have to check. But what I was thinking about doing is making a 24-hour stream, putting it up on the YouTube channel, and programming into my TradeStation. So TradeStation is essentially where you can code algorithms for trading. And I wanted to make like a community hedge fund with like $5,000 just for fun, where anybody during the day could send a command to my brokerage account and buy and sell securities. And I wanted to see just for fun what the performance would be after 12 months. But as I was thinking about it, I didn't really understand the legal implications of that. So I don't really want to get in hot water, but I think that would be a blast. So I'm currently looking into seeing if that's legal, and if it is, stay tuned, because I think that would be not only fun, but hilarious. And you never know, because if you think about the random walk theory in finance, if you had just a bunch of random people throwing out random commands to buy and sell different securities, and then after a year's worth of data, comparing that to, let's say, just any hedge fund manager on Wall Street, could you imagine if we actually outperform? You know, what would that say about sort of an underlying investing thesis there? Now, I know I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole, but I think that would be quite interesting. So here we are, everybody, outside of the 432 Park Avenue. So this building has been plagued with many issues. But I'm not gonna lie, looking at it is really, really beautiful, especially standing directly under it. It's so tall that it almost looks unreal. Now, I think over the weekend, we actually just had a record closure, an $80 million closure in this. Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. An $80 million closure in this building. I think it was one of the record deals in this building alone. JA, this seems like a very cool idea, 100% support it. You could even run different experiments with those commands to prioritize random performances based, etc. Yeah, I mean, my thought process in that, and obviously I would do like different time limits. So anytime somebody would buy a specific stock, I would make sure it has to be held at least, you know, a week. Just because I don't want the account to churn so much and rack up commission fees. But maybe we'll look into it, because I think there's an interesting case study to be had here with that. But I just want to make sure it's legal first. Miss Brown Eyes, good to see you. Thank you for the $2 donation. Much appreciated. Thank you for being here. Yes, so photos from around New York. So if anybody wants to read photos from around New York's, comment in the chat. That's exactly what I'm getting at, right? Because there's actually was one study where a monkey, or I think it was either a cat or it was a monkey, the monkey actually outperformed the vast majority of money managers on Wall Street when they were just giving the monkey random stock picks. And whatever the monkey would point at, they would buy. And 2 weeks later, whatever the monkey would point out, they would sell. And the monkey actually outperformed the majority of hedge fund managers. It was really interesting. So that's sort of where I was, or where I wanted to take it. But we'll see. I think it would be cool to have like a community, algorithm. So, and just try it with a very small amount of money, just to see what the performance would be after 12 months. All right, so now we are walking down Madison Avenue. We're actually getting very close to the Jefferies Building, which is another big financial firm on Wall Street. But we are going to cross back over to Fifth Avenue. NE says, Tom, do you think, unless you have at least a couple grand, it's not worth it to invest in single securities? I don't know about that, to be totally honest. I'm along the lines of, I think you should try to save up if you're actually in the business to try to manage money. Like if you want to be a money manager, obviously the easiest way to go about it is OPM. So OPM stands for other people's money. And I think if you want to be a true money manager on Wall Street, you probably need to raise money from outside investors and things like that. But if you're trying to run your own personal account and actively trade it, I think that's fine as well. But I think you should do that if you have, let's say, $100,000 saved. I think if you don't, it's probably best just to index it through like an index fund via Vanguard or something like that, and then study the market and sort of learn how to manage risk and things like that. But if you want to be a serious money manager, I think the easiest way or barrier to entry is to study the financial markets, maybe go to business school or something like that, and then raise money from wealthy individuals, or OPM. Oh, this place looks pretty cool. So this is Carlton Fine Arts here in Manhattan. NE says, Tom, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's basically people who manage money shouldn't need to be paid since they should already have enough money to manage themselves. Yeah, so I've heard that too. I don't necessarily agree with that for a myriad of reasons. But if you think about any other profession, every other person in every profession gets paid to do what they do, right? So I always like to use the example of like a real estate manager. Let's say if you're a property manager, you're managing assets technically, right? You're managing a portfolio. And I think you should get compensated for that. What I don't think, and I think for anybody who's listening who wants to raise money and launch their own hedge fund, I think you'll find a lot of success if you don't charge management fees, but only charge performance fees. I think that's probably going to be an easier sales pitch. So I'm actually thinking about doing that down the road, but I don't think I'm going to do OPM. I may just do that with people I'm very, very familiar with in business that I already do business with now, to say, look, I'll manage your money. I don't want a 2% management fee like every other hedge fund manager on the street is going to charge you. I'll just take 20% of the profits, because what this creates is an environment where if we lose money, we all lose money, right? What I don't want to happen is if we lose money for the year, I still take 2% off the top as a management fee. I think that is a little bit outdated. So I think if you really want to stand out, maybe that's an interesting approach to say, okay, no management fees. I'll manage the money for free. But I'll just take 20% of the profits, or 10 or 15 or whatever you want to do. But to that point, I sort of agree that, maybe taking a 2% management fee is a little bit outdated, maybe. But here we have the Jefferies Building, which is a major, major financial firm on Wall Street. I actually don't think Jefferies is involved with the Twitter debacle. I do believe that Morgan Stanley is the lead financial advisor on this Twitter deal for Elon Musk. Yeah, Anthony's like, performance fees lead to gambling by managers. You know, that is such a good comment. I never really thought about it like that, but that's a really good comment. So think about, was that Jack? Let me see. No, it was Anthony. So Anthony said performance fees, or not performance fees, management fees lead to gambling by the managers. Because if you think about it, if you know as a hedge fund manager or the portfolio manager, any of your PMs, oh, we're going to get paid regardless if we make money or not. So that leads them to maybe do things that are a little bit too risky, or take some chances that they normally wouldn't have if they thought, look, we really got to make this work or we're not going to get paid. Really good point. Really good point. I never thought about it like that. So here we have Jeffries. I think Jeffries Building is one of my favorite buildings in the city, because look at the architecture on this thing. It sort of starts with a huge foundation and then gets progressively skinnier at the top. Very cool building here. Very unique. Hey, insurance practice exams is here. Good to see you. A lot of open retail space here, I noticed. Mimi is here, says it's like no load for mutual fund managers. Yeah, so Mimi, to your point, so everybody, back in the day, and we've talked about this a long time on the streams, back in the day, you know, mutual fund managers on Wall Street would make the vast majority of their money from what's called load fees, or LOAD. So oftentimes they would charge you, you know, a $5 front end load fee, and then when you wanted to sell, another 5% on the back. But now, pretty much ever since Jack Bogle or John Bogle really revolutionized the industry with index funds, very low cost index funds, I don't even think there's any mutual funds with a load anymore. I mean, there may be for like some institutional clients, but if you're paying a 5% load fee in 2022, you're getting ripped off in a very, very big way. Hey, Michael D is here. Hey, Michael. Good to see you. Anthony Tripp says oil companies never lose money and pay 10% dividends. That's why rich people invest in them. I don't know about that. Some of my biggest losses on Wall Street were... So I'll tell you a story about when I first started actively managing my own portfolio in college. I pretty much, this is before I, you know, started studying risk management and how to beta weight a portfolio and true diversification. Because I was 19 years old, 18, 19. I thought I was a genius, just like any punk 18 or 19-year-old thinks. I don't think I was any different. I'm like, wow, you know, Donald Trump is going to get elected and he's going to deregulate the oil industry. That means all of these offshore drilling companies, they're going to generate so much free cash and they're going to go to the moon. So I bought all of these garbage, offshore drilling stocks like Transocean and a bunch of other ones that are not even around yet. You guys probably wouldn't even know them. But if you want to look up one of them, I think they actually did some restructuring. I think they went through like a bunch of Chapter 11s. Ticker symbol is RIG, R-I-G, or Transocean. I bought all those offshore drilling companies and I thought I was a genius. And pretty much all of them went to zero. And I thought I was so smart, but at the end of the day, all the investments are going towards renewables and not towards oil and gas. And I didn't understand just how expensive it was from an operations standpoint to operate an offshore drilling company. So yeah, that was a bit of a sting there. Yeah, that was back, yeah, I think I was about 18, 19 at the time. This was 2016, I believe. Yeah, parking full time since I've owned rig for a while. Oh my God, I'll never... So one of my buddies actually bought me a hat. I'll show it to you guys. I gotta take a picture. So I thought I was just such a genius. I was such a punk. So I thought I was such a genius. So I put a ton of money in Rig, Transocean. I lost it all. And he bought me, you know those Make America Great Again hats? But he bought me a hat that says, Make Rig Profitable Again. And it's sitting up on my desk. And it's a good reminder to not be, to be humble when you're managing money. And don't think you know everything, because you don't. But this is St. Thomas Church here, which is one of my favorite churches in New York City. Mainly because the architecture is so beautiful. Yeah, this is not to say anything about St. Patrick's Cathedral, but I think the architecture on this one is really, really unique. One of my favorite churches here. Hey, Mike Skate TV is here. Good to see you. Dennis Henry, welcome, Dennis. Good to see you. No ID, welcome. Thank you for joining. Matt Bob, good to see you. Matthias says, where did you study? So I went to a CUNY school on the Upper West Side. I guess you can technically call it Upper West Side, but John Jay. It was a criminal justice school, 59th Street. But speaking of oil companies, I think the main two Dow components, ExxonMobil and Chevron, are reporting earnings this week. And many analysts on the street are expecting huge blowout numbers from Chevron as well as ExxonMobil, to your point, Anthony. Anthony's like, Tom, make red hats cool again. Funny. Hey, Thomas says you went to Lehman. Lehman's a great school. Lehman's a great school, man. So we have a lot of CUNY alumni here, which is kind of cool. Our moderator, Cosmo, is a Baruch Bearcat. Check out this dog. Yeah, I think Baruch is a very good school for finance. Really good finance school. So I applied to Brooklyn College, I applied to Baruch. I got rejected at every single one of them except John Jay. But I had a good time. Hey, Cynthia Beale says Queens College. Very nice. Very nice. But for those of you who are just joining, we just quickly did a deep dive on the Twitter deal. We talked about some ways that Twitter could potentially sort of streamline their operations, not only from making the algorithm open source, which I think will solve a lot of the quote-unquote free speech problems. Because one of the main points we were talking about is, at least in my opinion, I'm going to say in my opinion because maybe this isn't the case, maybe I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the turbocharged emotions around free speech come into play when people are unfamiliar with different opinions. And I think that social media algorithms exacerbate this phenomenon. What I mean by that is, if you ever go on Twitter, if you go on Facebook, especially YouTube, the algorithm will essentially feed you only content that agrees with your biases, right? Because the goal of a social media platform is to have you continuously consume content. So the algorithms are made to feed you stuff that you like. It's sort of like giving you a dopamine punch over and over and over again. And maybe that's good in some ways, but I think it's really bad in ways because it allows you to get caught up in sort of an ecosphere of only dealing with people that agree with you and only get around like-minded individuals that only agree with your narrative. And when you consume that type of content too much, other ideas become so foreign where it almost becomes scary that anytime you hear another perspective, either on the left or the right, you freak out and you want to have them canceled and all this crazy nonsense. So I think by having an open sourced algorithm, I think a lot of those problems will be solved. But what do you guys think? And I'm not saying that's going to fix it. That's just one of my ideas. And that's one of the reasons why I was a supporter of Elon Musk acquiring Twitter, because I think algorithms should be open sourced. Andy S. is, Tom, my YouTube is only New York live streamers. Funny. I think mine is too. Dennis Henry says, Tom, I totally agree. Cosmos Scary, our good moderator, says, Tom, I listened to an audiobook about how bad algorithms are. It's called Stolen Focus. Let me take a screenshot of that, actually. So this is MoMA, one of my favorite museums in the city. Not to be beaten out by the Henry Clay Frick Museum, which is probably one of my favorite. Hey, Mr. Burns is here. This is just found the stream. What is going on? Thank you for joining the stream. We very much appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Virginia says, hello from Argentina. Tom, how are you? I'm doing really good. It was a good day. Tomorrow's going to be a really, really busy day. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to stream tomorrow, but that is to be determined. Mike Skate TV says, I've been to MoMA PS1 in Queens. Good to see you. Hey, Out and About is here. Our moderator from the one and only Toronto, Canada. So talking about billionaires, 53 West 53 is I think one of the newest addition to Billionaires Row. It is called the MoMA Building. And if you want to watch some of the videos on YouTube about this building, it is absolutely beautiful here. 53 West 53. Gorgeous building inside. Andy S. says, Tom, what about nuclear power for the future? Obviously, I know what I'm talking about. I think nuclear, if we want to really have a sustainable society in terms of clean energy, wind and solar is not going to do it. You need nuclear reactors, you need nuclear power, which is actually the cleanest form of energy on planet Earth. So I am highly, highly in favor of nuclear power. Hey, Liminal says, there are ways you can implement proof of work and content, signing and other Web3 tech to help combat bots and fake news. Very good point. Very good point. Liminal, if you want to expand on that a little bit for the chat, because I agree with that wholeheartedly. So maybe if you want, if you could expand on that, maybe put some specifics. We'd love to hear it, because I'm all for that. So check this out. This is the Steinway Building here, which is another Billionaires Row tower. And I remember constantly, ever since this thing was being built, the crane would fall off this building literally probably once a year. And this crane was all the way up there and would crash land down on the floor right here. And at the time I was living in this building with the gold top, and the street would constantly be closed off. Do you guys remember that? I would always wake up and I would hear, at least I would get these text alerts saying that the street is closed off because the cranes are falling off the buildings on 57th Street. It was crazy. Hey, our good friend Patrick New York is here. Hey, Patrick. Welcome. Hey, Line Sync is here. Good to see you. Jared Covey. What's up, Jared? Somebody's like, are you bullish crypto? I am. I don't really want to call myself a Bitcoin maximalist, but the only crypto assets that I have exposure to is Bitcoin and Ethereum. But if you guys want to learn a little bit more about Bitcoin, maybe if you're just getting involved in the space, I actually was able to get a press pass to the 2022 Bitcoin conference, where we actually sat down front row and center with some of the leaders in the space, like Michael Saylor, Michael Novogratz, which is the former Goldman Sachs managing director, made $1 billion at Fortress Investments, and now runs Galaxy Digital Assets. So if you want to read my total recap of the conference, if you type !news, NEWS, in the chat, click the link that the Nightbot drops and you can read all of my research for free. It is called the Behind the Street newsletter. And we will be sending out issue number 21 tomorrow. So just punch in your email and I'll send that to you guys for free every single week. As we are streaming live outside of the UBS building on Avenue of the Americas, one of my favorite locations in the city. I used to work not too far away from here. Hey, DM is here. Hey, DM. Says, yes, Tom, I remember the crane falling. I live on 57th Street and 11th. Yeah, I mean, they got to do something about that because that's, I mean, that could kill somebody. I mean, we got very, very lucky that those cranes didn't fall on top of people. So this is outside of the Charles Schwab building. It looks like they did an amazing job with the landscaping here. Hey, Jeff W277 says, Tom, no joke, I made more money from Dogecoin last year than all of the other cryptocurrencies combined. Well, hey, man, congratulations to you. I'm not a big Dogecoin fan, but anytime anybody has success, I am all for it and excited about it. So I'm pumped up. I'm pumped up. Anthony Tripp, oh my God, says, Tom, I'm all in physical gold and cat food. Oh my God. Dennis Phillip is here. Good to see you. NMB045 says, what's the name of that coffee shop on Avenue in Americas that we used to skateboard? Ooh, I forget. I think on the 24/7 skateboard stream, it was Black Press Coffee. That was really good on Black Press Coffee on the Upper West Side. I want to read Liminal's post because I thought that was quite interesting. Hey, Jane Lee is here. Good to see you. So Liminal posted the 3 points about how Web3 could help with all of this craziness. The chat is going a little bit wild tonight, so I'm going to try to find them the best I can. But for some reason I cannot see them. I really wanted to read those. Liminal says outlets could sign videos, articles, etc. with private keys that correspond to verified public keys on the mainstream blockchain. Very good points. What was number 2? I'll have to go back and read it, Liminal. I really wanted to see your viewpoints on that. Number 2 says users would be required to perform proof of work in order to publish. Spamming becomes very expensive at scale. Very good point. So that would eliminate all these spam bots. So I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but after the streams have concluded, especially when we're talking about Bitcoin or stocks specifically, I mean, my comment sections get lit up with all of these spam bots that are pretending to be me, trying to solicitate the viewers to email them or message them over WhatsApp to give them Bitcoin. So just to let you guys know, I would never ask for any sort of payment from you guys. So if you see those comments where it's like Walks Wall Street 123 or Walks Wall Street, oh, this is so cool. This guy's in a full suit skateboarding. That's awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, so in conclusion, I'll never ask you guys to send me any money. So just, if there is somebody that looks like me, they're definitely a scam. Lather's like, Tom, you've made it. You've been spam botted. Yeah, I mean, it's annoying because, I mean, you never know. I mean, it's obvious that these are scams, but, you know, it only takes one person to fall for it, and then, yeah, no bueno, not good. So we are outside Radio City Music Hall, everybody. Yeah, Mr. Burns like, what a badass. Dutchman says, Tom, are you going to have dinner soon? So that's a good point. I have to eat dinner. So I went to Dig today, which is one of my favorite places. I think Cosmo, if he's still in the chat, Cosmo likes that place too. Great place. Dig. So here's the Brooks Brothers. Fresh out of bankruptcy, unfortunately. Brooks Brothers went under during the pandemic. Lewis, what's up, man? Good to see you, Lewis. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, somebody's like, Tom, you should get chicken and rice from the halal guys. Maybe I'll get that tonight. Mike C says, wait, you didn't get the 12 Bitcoin I sent? So funny. Yeah, so don't click on any links. I'm not gonna ask you guys for Bitcoin. If anything, if you guys are buying Bitcoin, make sure you rip it off the exchanges as fast as possible and put it on a hardware wallet or a paper wallet, as it's called, a cold storage, and never send your Bitcoin to anybody, and never send it to me. I don't want it. I want you guys to keep it. So please, if you see any spam bots, like, text this WhatsApp number. Walks in Wall Street wants to manage your money. I don't want to manage your money. So yeah. So let's check out the roller rink. So now at the Rockefeller Center, they changed the ice skating rink to the roller skating rink. We'll check it out. Liminal says, Jerry Covey, I think Twitter will become a fantastic incubator for Elon to make social media better. Dude, I couldn't agree more. I'm amped up about it. Guys, if you want, I think if you're looking to not only get something out of social media, because I think a lot of times, and this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the stream, social media has become a way for people to consume, but never really get involved in the conversation. So a lot of times you'll just consume content of celebrities, but it seems like you're very isolated from the conversation. Twitter is the only platform where you could tweet at a CEO of a publicly traded company, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to see it, right? They're going to see it. They may not reply to you, but I can guarantee you they're going to see it. And sometimes they'll actually engage in a dialogue with you. You could tweet at reporters. So I think Twitter is going to be so powerful. And not only if you're in the finance world, you could be an artist. Maybe you're a musician or whatever it is. Maybe you just like knitting. You can communicate with other people that are knitters, right? I mean, the opportunities are endless there. And the reason why I like Twitter is because it sort of knocks down the barriers of a class society. Oh, you're high class, you're middle class, you're lower class. On Twitter, everybody has the same open opportunity to communicate with each other on the same playing field. And that's, I mean, my bull thesis on Twitter, maybe I'll actually write a piece about it, but I could ramble on about it for a long time. But if you're looking to make relevant contacts, if you're looking for job opportunities, I think you'd be surprised what you can accomplish on Twitter. Ooh, I think we just missed the cutoff, everybody. So this is closed, but it still looks really nice. I think they did a really good job with the outdoor area here. I kind of like what they did with the trees here too. Hey, Josie is here. Good to see you, Josie. Kareem says, how are you? I'm doing really good, Kareem. I hope you are well. WW is here. Says, is this quality really that unique to Twitter? I feel like there could be plenty of communication platforms that could theoretically operate like that. Yeah, I think you're right, WW, but talking about Twitter, comparing it to like an other social media platform like Facebook, no, you can't really engage with people the way you can do with Twitter. Because Twitter, it's almost like I like to think of Twitter as like a Twilio platform, right? A Twilio is like a comms as a service where you could send out mass text messages to people. Twitter is sort of like mass text messaging, but it's stored forever. And you can communicate and you can reply to everybody at the same time. I feel like Twitter is like a big group chat, almost. Marty Lewis says there are a lot of good interest groups on Facebook. That is true. But that's the thing, like, think about it like that. There's a group on Facebook. I think it can be a little bit isolating at times. But look, I think the main point is Meta or Facebook has done a really good job at monetizing and generating value for shareholders, and Twitter hasn't. That's just the reality. So I think with new management, I think Twitter is going to be able to excel, and not just under Elon Musk. I would have been in favor for pretty much anybody to do this, because obviously what they're doing at Twitter right now is not working. Marty Lewis is like, Tom, I see Twitter as the biggest political platform. You know, that's interesting take, Marty Lewis. I almost have the opposite take. I think about Facebook as being a little bit political. But then again, I haven't been on Facebook in a long, long time, to be honest. But Marty Lewis, did you go swimming today? Every time I see Marty Lewis, I associate Marty Lewis with swimming. Because Marty Lewis is always just coming back from swimming. Jonathan Francis, great advertising network on Facebook, relatively cheap advertising. Yeah, you're right. And I think, so you can advertise on Twitter as well, but I don't think it's nearly as good because the layout, I think, and remember the stream we did with Action Kid? I think Action Kid pretty much summed it up the best. He's like, if you think about Facebook from an advertising standpoint, if you think about Instagram, which is also owned by Meta Platforms and Facebook, the reason why it's so good at converting ads is because they're very focused on media, they're very focused on photos, and they're very focused on video. Twitter, to use Action Kid's words, not mine, it's just like a big text block, and that's not really going to catch somebody's eye if you're trying to advertise something to them, which I guess is true. So I think what they should probably do is make a separate page on Twitter to be focused towards either small to medium-sized businesses or large Fortune 500 companies to showcase, advertise their products, sort of like a big table day or something like that. I think that'd be kind of unique. Hey, Line Sinks says, does it always have to be about monetizing though? Thoughts? So I think that's a good thought. I think monetizing has to be a major part of the conversation, because at the end of the day, you need to make money to have the platform be sustainable. And I think monetization, not only from a standpoint of Twitter making money, but maybe independent creators. Let's say if you're an independent artist or an independent musician or something like that. What do those opportunities look like? And I think Twitter is the place to be, especially now. But that's a good point. It's a good point. Maybe monetizing to the point where it doesn't impact the user experience. Kareem is here. Welcome, Kareem. Ruby Falcone says, time check 10:45. Thank you, Ruby. Much appreciated. Cynthia Beal is here. Ibrahim Azam. Hey, Marty Lewis is Tom. I didn't go to the pool today. I had some MacBook Air problems and had to get Apple to help me out. Black screen, all is good now. So Marty, which MacBook do you have? Because I was actually talking about, in all honesty, on Twitter about Apple's new M1 chip. So going back to earnings season a little bit, obviously this week is earnings season. We have a lot of the semiconductor stocks reporting earnings, one of which being Intel. And obviously Intel, well, at least they used to supply a major amount of chips to companies like Apple. But ever since Apple sort of kicked them to the curb, the stock price has been floundering a little bit. But if we think about the M1 chip, or the new M1 chip that Apple came out with, which I believe is now in all of their new MacBook products and iMac products, those are absolutely fantastic. And that is sort of what led me to actually purchase an iMac probably about 6 to 8 months ago, just because the quality and the, I guess you could say the latency and the response times and just the overall fastness, if that's a word, of that particular computer is insane. And I got the lower end M1 chip. So watch out for that. A lot of semiconductor companies reporting earnings. I think I'm probably going to be paying attention to Intel the most to see how they will be diversifying away from Apple, kicking them to the curb. Yeah, Ken Glass says, Tom, M1 is a game changer, absolute game changer. Hey, Sammy Basie says, hello, Tom, welcome back to New York. Thanks so much, man. Thank you so much. Hey, Miss Brown Eyes, thank you for the $4 donation. You are way too kind. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. Hey, Pixel Logic. This is Happy Monday, Tom. Happy Monday, Pixel Logic. XOXX Bob is here. Paul says, what is your favorite place in New York? If I had to pick a specific place, probably would be the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Probably would be the Upper West Side of Manhattan. So to conclude the sort of Elon Musk Twitter talk, let's take a quick poll in the chat. It's just going to be a quick yes or no. Do you think that Elon Musk is going to make an impact for the good of Twitter? Now, we're not going to judge the responses. Everybody's opinion is welcome here. I just for fun, let's see what you guys think. So yes or no, do we think that Elon Musk at the realm of Twitter is going to make a positive impact? I'm seeing a lot of yeses. RT440 says no. XOXX Bob says no. Tom says it doesn't matter. Exploration says yes. The Truth says yes. Brad's Brain says yes. Indie Guy says yes. Marty Lewis says no. WW the Jet Fighter says no. Ed says yes. Mr. Burns says maybe. WW says I'm gonna say no. Okay, I respect it. Ron says yes. The Strider says yes. Elon Musk has his Midas touch. Cynthia Beale, yes. Buy the Book says yes. Parking full time. So I'm gonna say yes. SCGT says no. I respect it. Mimi's like depends on who loaned the money. I think that was Goldman Sachs. Jordan B says, I'm honestly not sure. I guess we'll see. I'll keep an open mind. I think that's a great comment, Jordan. So I think that he will, but I don't think it's all about Elon Musk. I think if you had, and going back to Thoma Bravo, so Thoma Bravo is owned, the company is owned by Orlando Bravo. He's a Puerto Rican billionaire, really, really smart guy, very, very well respected on the street. He was actually thinking about buying Twitter. I think any competent management company or investor or technologist that would have made a bid for Twitter that was as lucrative as what Elon Musk made, I would be backing that. I would be supporting it. It just so happened to be Elon Musk. But I think it's 100,000% going to be a lot better. I think you're going to see a lot of the spam bots go away that try to solicit people for money. A lot of the fake news and fraud stuff is probably going to go away, and probably because they are going to adopt an open source style algorithm, which I'm in favor of. But I guess we'll have to see. Hey, Great Walk is here. What's up? SD Rob says if you spend that much, you don't turn around and censor it. Says SD Rob. That's a good point. Anthony says yes and no. So it looks like we're about half and half. Or I'd say about 75% say yes, he'll make a good impact. 25% say no. Marty Lewis says he might have Twitter make money, but that is not important to me. It was a mess from the time Trump started tweeting lies, says Marty Lewis. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll have to see. So Marty Lewis, I'm not sure. I think you joined. So here was one of my main points. And Marty, I want to see if you, what you think of this, because I value your opinion very much. on the channel. I enjoy our conversations. I think that the reason why a lot of the political conversation on Twitter is so polarizing is because of the Twitter algorithm purposely feeding you all the information that you agree with already. So at any one chance that the algorithm could quote unquote slip up and feed you an idea that you're not used to seeing, people start to freak out and flip out, and they call for people being canceled. And it's both on the right and the left. I'm not going to single out any one particular party. It happens on both sides. But I think the reason why Twitter is probably going to get better is because of the open source algorithm. I think as of right now, Twitter only feeds you the information that you want to see, feeding into your cognitive biases, myself included. And so anytime we see a thought or an opinion from a Republican, the left flips out, wants them canceled. Anytime somebody that's Republican sees a comment made by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they freak out. It's mainstream news on Tucker Carlson, and they say AOC wants to take your jobs, and she wants to take your kids' jobs, and she's going to ruin America. It's so ridiculous, right? So I think that Elon Musk is going to change a lot of that by massaging an open source protocol, and hopefully that'll, I'm not going to say that's going to change it, but hopefully that'll dampen a lot of the, I guess you could call it, what, polarization of the platform. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off base. But we'll have to see. It's one of my favorite fountains in New York here. Liminal says, Tom, Reddit and Stack Overflow benefit from community moderation. There might be a way to do that on Twitter. Yeah, so Stack Overflow is a great resource for coders, for sure. You know, that's also why I like Discord. So a shameless plug, if you guys want to connect with us on Discord, click the links in the description. You could join our Discord. We talk about the financial markets, we talk about tech, and we also use it to post cool and interesting photos from around New York and Miami. So feel free to join us on the Discord, and you could follow us on Twitter at Walks Wall Street. Marty Lewis says, Tom, I think the internet as a whole uses algorithms to reinforce our personal biases and opinions. That's a good point. That's a good point. Frederico says, can a city be so beautiful like New York? Indeed. Leitha says, Discord wants my personal information. Boo Discord. Basie says, thank you for passing by the fountain. No problem. Matt says, I believe Elon is able to make good profits from this purchase, and I think there is room for changes in Twitter, but rumors tell Twitter change the name. Elon can be crazy billionaire that destroys Twitter. Interesting. B1 STP3T3 says, key to view opposing views, make your own decision/view. Agreed. Agreed. Kurt says hello, good to see you, Kurt. All right, let's continue on our walk here. I'll give you one more shot of Radio City Music Hall. So speaking of financials, AllianceBernstein was down big today. So AllianceBernstein is a big money manager here on the Wall Street, and their stock got hammered today in heavy volume, might I add. Jordan B says, Tom, the open source algorithm change is necessary. I have a lot of friends who are chronically online, as they like to say, and spend way too much time interacting with people that already agree with them. Interesting perspective, Jordan B. Love that. And you know, in full honesty, I catch myself doing that too, right? But I think over the years, I've had the ability to understand when I'm doing that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm consuming. It's almost like it can get you into the mindset of like being in a cult almost. It's like I'm talking with people that only agree with me. So the next time I hear an opposing opinion, I'm gonna freak out and be like, oh, that's crazy. How could you possibly think that? So I catch myself doing that too. Yeah, Marty Lewis has loved the tulips. Look at how amazing these things are. The colors are insane. So speaking of flowers, I will have the Central Park standalone video up very soon of the cherry blossoms. Liminal says again, Tom, there is no substitute for a well-informed audience with adequate critical thinking skills that we can't solve with an algorithm, in my opinion. It's actually a good point. Yeah, I think to your point, I think it has to do with self-awareness, right? I think it has to do with self-awareness as well. You know, I'm so surprised with how dead it is right here. Although it is a Monday night in all fairness, but we're getting closer to Times Square and it is a ghost town. Hey, Savi says, I just snapped a few pictures of the tulips. Very cool. Oh, I forgot. So somebody, I think, I'm not sure if you're watching, I don't know. But somebody came up to me and said, what's up today on the streets in New York, said she watches the streams. So I just want to say one more time, thank you so much for watching. And I hope you have a fantastic day. And thank you for supporting the streams. So thank you so much. Hey, we have Nicole winning. What's up, Nicole? Good to see you. Says, hello, Tom. Missed watching these lives. Good to see you, Nicole. We were talking about the Twitter debacle today. Elon Musk is officially going to buy Twitter. I think Morgan Stanley is the lead investment bank that's providing all of the financial advice to Elon Musk. I think Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase are also going to help close the deal and provide some financing. Great walks is no problem, just kidding. It wasn't me. Yeah, Nicole says, I saw that. I love Elon. Yeah, I mean, we're about 75-25 in the chat. 75% of the people think that Elon is going to do a good job, 25% don't. I guess we'll just have to see. I tend to be an optimist to the point of almost being annoying sometimes, but I think he's going to do a stellar job. I think he's going to do fantastic. So we'll see. Laytha, good to see you. So now we're passing one of the best pizza places in all New York, Sbarro. Fantastic. Just kidding. Sbarro is not that good. But speaking of a good pizza place, I actually went to a really good place in Long Beach, New York, out on Long Island. Fantastic place, right near the train station. I completely forget the name of it, but I go there probably once a month. But I will drop the link to that pizza spot once I remember the name, but it is fantastic. Long Beach, New York has some really good pizza spots. Really, really good spots. Somebody says, what about Joe Pizza? I think it's all right. I think it's all right. Dennis Henry was like scared me there for a minute. Almost said Sbarro. Yeah, we almost got shadow banned by YouTube for saying that. Good thing we clarified that. Mike Skate TV. Good to see you, Mike. Yeah, Cosmo's like, I agree. Joe's is okay. Yeah, everybody makes a big deal about it. I get it because it has a lot of history in New York, but it's all right. It's a decent slice. I'd say probably about a 7.9. 7.9 slice. If I had to rate it on the pizza review scale. But if anybody wants to have a really, really good laugh, if you type in on YouTube, Joe and Pat's Pizza Review, regardless of if you like the Barstool Sports guy or not, I'm not a big sports type of guy, even though I did play college soccer. But check out the Joe and Pat's Pizza Review. You're gonna have a crazy good laugh. Let me just tell you that. Hey, Liminal says Gino's Pizza in Limbrook. Not sure. So there's also a Gino's Pizza in Long Beach too, which is okay. It's pretty good. Explorations, like one bite, everybody knows the rules. Hey, this stuff is cool. I think they just put this up here. So these are all the Broadway shows, I'm assuming. You know, The Lion King has been here ever since I was a little kid. Ron says if Elon's purchase of Twitter is positive, then it's not a debacle. Yeah, maybe I should rephrase that. Maybe the reaction to Elon's purchase of Twitter was a debacle. So here we are on West 47th Street and Broadway. Speaking of Morgan Stanley, here they are right here. So Morgan Stanley, I believe, is providing all the financial advice to Elon Musk, or is going to be his financial advisor. I can't believe we're in Times Square 2 nights in a row. Hey, British Greg, good to see you. Hope you're well. So we're at the top of the hour, top of 2 hours, so I will have to take a quick water break here, so stand by. Please stand by. But we are very close to the red stairs here. All right, we are good to go. We are hydrated and ready. Hey, Pixelogic, good to see you. So for those of you who are just joining, just a quick reminder, we will have the Behind the Street newsletter sent out tomorrow, right as the market is closing. So if you are not yet signed up for the Behind the Street newsletter, if you type !news, N-E-W-S, in the chat, the Nightbot will drop the link where you can sign up for free, and I will send you a financial newsletter covering not only the US equities market, but also emerging markets, the fixed income market, cryptocurrency market, and more. So feel free to join us over there as we have a beautiful view of the H&M building here. Yoel says, what is your name? My name is Tom. Hey, Rich is here. Good to see you, Rich. Hope you're doing well. Hope your Monday is going according to plan. More walkers. Does your hotel have a view? It actually does. It actually does. So one of my clients was kind enough to put me up in a hotel so I didn't have to travel back to New York. So thank you to them. But Rich, we just covered talking about Twitter. We also covered briefly, obviously Microsoft, Alphabet, Google, and Amazon are all reporting earnings. But I think the main thing we have to focus on those particular companies is the cloud computing division. And then we talked a little bit about the semiconductor sector that is going to be reporting earnings. Obviously, Intel will probably be the one to watch, being that Apple has kicked them to the curb. And Apple is internalizing the manufacturing and the production and the design of the M1 chip. But I think besides that, one of the biggest things we have to look for as the semiconductor companies are reporting earnings is to get a little bit of an idea if a lot of these companies are having a backlog of inventory. So obviously we have a huge global semiconductor shortage, but usually what happens is as companies try to account for these global semiconductor shortages, they could actually build up a pretty large inventory of chips. And that may put a slowdown on all future orders. So definitely will be one of the main spots to look for as they report. Hey, Erica says, I just moved to Atlanta from New York. I'm so delighted to do these walks so I can see back home. Hey, Erica. Well, thank you for being here. Much appreciated. YLRL says, anxious to visit this city. You gotta come. Please visit us. So this block I think is where the majority of the theaters are down here. Hey, Russell Miller, this is always a pleasure from Philadelphia. Good to see you, Russell. But Erica Edwards, thank you for joining. And hopefully you can come back to New York soon. You guys already know this, but when I was a teenager, I actually used to work right in this building at this express right here. I used to work the 9 o'clock at night to 3 o'clock in the morning shift. It was horrible. But one of the cool things, I actually got to work here on New Year's Eve, stocking the shelves. So I was right here when the ball dropped. Line syncs, like, is it just me or there are fewer sirens these days? I think there are. Hey, Tony Lagos is here. Good to see you, Tony. Tony is joining us from the one and only Australia. Good to see you. Mass, good to see you. Hopefully you're doing well. Hey, Arturo Flores, thanks for what you do, Tom. I'm watching you on my 65-inch TV. Wow, that must look awesome, man. So we're gonna head to the NASDAQ. So hopefully the NASDAQ is gonna look even better on your 65-inch TV. You know, I wonder how the colors come out watching it in 1080p. I was wondering if the saturation is gonna be a little bit too overpowered. But I'll have to watch it on a replay. Hey, Mike R is here. Good to see you, Mike. Hope you're having a good one. Mike R says, I miss New York. Yeah, lately, like I've never seen so much Times Square. I used to live on 42nd and 8th. I wonder what, Layla, what was your rent payment on 47th and 8th. It's a really nice area. Dutchman says, Tom, if you were on Twitter board, what would you like to see changed? They need to deploy better operations to get rid of all the spam bots. So I think in order to have a Twitter account, there should be ways to verify that you're actually a human being and not just a bot. I think there's way too many bots on Twitter. I think you could probably say Twitter is probably about maybe 10% bots, and then maybe being conservative. Hey Tyree, says, Tom, how do you stay motivated? Well, I think I try to put things into perspective. So I was listening to this really interesting keynote speech at the Bitcoin 2022 conference, and it sort of put things into perspective, but I always kind of thought this way. I forget her name, and I don't want to pronounce her name wrong, but her last name was Park, and she actually was one of the only people to ever escape from North Korea, which is really, I mean, you could only imagine what it was like to escape from North Korea, the communist dictatorship. And she was saying that, you know, and this was the topic of the piece. So if you guys read the Behind the Street newsletter piece, it was titled, The United States Doesn't Need Bitcoin, but the Rest of the World Does. If we understand that, what I'm talking about there is that only 18% of the world, oh, here's the guy again on the board. If we understand only 18% of the world's population is born into a free market society under a sustainable regime and born into a sustainable currency, about everybody else is born into a dictatorship regime or a hyperinflationary currency. So knowing that I live in not only the most powerful capitalistic city on earth, which is New York, and I was blessed enough to be born in the United States, I mean, that in itself just keeps me motivated. I mean, talk about hitting the lottery there, right? So 18% of the people essentially in this world hit the lottery of being born into a free society where you essentially could pretty much do whatever you want with very minor limitations. Everybody else is living under dictatorship. In many countries, you can't even go to school. If you're, you know, a little girl, you can't go to school, right? If you are a certain religion, like what they're doing in China, essentially if you're a Muslim, they are quite literally eradicating you from the face of the earth, what they're doing to the Uyghur groups in China. So knowing that I live in the United States, I have the opportunity to really do whatever I want. I have my freedoms, freedom of property, freedom of speech. I mean, that just keeps me motivated to do whatever I want to do, because the vast majority of the world doesn't have that luxury. So I feel like if I was not motivated and sitting around and complaining and sort of being depressive about my life, I think that would be pretty disingenuous to everybody else in the world that would kill to have my spot. I mean, there's millions upon millions of people that would love to trade places with any American or anybody that lives in a fair, free society. It's not only in America, some countries in Europe, but I think just thinking like that, big picture, thinking in a global macro perspective, will help you stay motivated, I think. Assuming you're in the United States or in a Western country where you have freedoms. Hey, Rich says, Tom, the new Twitter equals free speech. Good to see you, Rich. Erica Edwards has agreed. Good to see you. WW says, walks in Wall Street. Tom, I totally get what you're saying, but for some reason that makes me feel more guilty than motivated. I don't know why. Interesting perspective there. The rundowns is well said. And I mean, I think it's easy to forget that, right? I wish I could remember her name, but I don't want to mispronounce her name. I'm horrible with names. But I believe her last name was Park, and she was essentially said that. She's like, a lot of Americans in America will complain about if this person has white privilege, if this person has this privilege, that privilege. But she's like, you guys are missing the bigger picture. She's like, you guys are Americans. Doesn't matter what color or religion you are. You have American privilege. I mean, you guys are so spoiled in the United States, it's not even to be believed. She's like, if you spent one day in North Korea or one day in parts of the world where, you know, if you're a female or you're Muslim or you're LGBT, you literally can't operate a normal life. She's like, then you would really appreciate the freedoms you have. And that sort of really resonated with me. And it made me think about life in a different perspective. So I'll give you guys one more look of Times Square from here. And then I think we got to call it a night because my phone is going to die. Yes, so Atomic Skittles, that is the name. I don't want to mispronounce it because I'm horrible with names. Dennis says a lot of Americans need to hear that. Fourth quarter, I love your profile picture, by the way, with Muhammad Ali. Fantastic. Yo, Cosmo, thank you for joining. Good to see ya. Yeah, Strider1239 says you appreciate something when you lose it. So I think I could tie this into finance. So Ray Dalio actually just came out with a brand new book. I wrote about this a little bit in the Behind the Street newsletter about the cyclical, is that a word, cyclicalness? I'll just say cyclical state of a major country. Is this guy sitting in the road? Oh no, he's good. I thought it was a guy laying down. But essentially, at the end of all major empires, people get too comfortable and they start to fight internally over very petty BS. So if you want to listen to that interview with Ray Dalio, he really outlines the life cycle of a major global superpower. And his thesis is that the United States is getting towards the end of its regime as a global superpower. I kind of disagree with him on that. I think American exceptionalism is a real thing. I think that what makes America great is because, to my point, you have all these other countries out there that treat their citizens like crap. And all of those smart citizens flee to the United States, they flee to Canada, they flee to places in Europe. So it's always going to create that society where people, if they want to excel, if they want to open a business, if they want to get educated, it's going to be a big brain drain to the United States and Canada. I think that's going to continue. But check out Ray Dalio's, I don't really want to say interview, I guess presentation on the rise and fall of superpowers. It was really, really interesting. I think he actually just came out with a book as well. But I linked the video in the Behind the Street newsletter. DM, good to see you. Photos from around New York, cyclical nature. Yeah, that's a better way of putting it, cyclical nature. Hey, Pixelogics says, good night, Tom. Always enjoy the nights and the chats. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up too. My phone is gonna die. I also got to get some dinner. I think we ran a little bit over time anyway. But I wanted to leave you guys off with the Empire State Building, one of my favorite buildings. Tin Man, thank you so much for joining. Much appreciated. Another quick reminder, tomorrow I will be sending out the Behind the Street newsletter. So if you're not already signed up, if you type !news, feel free to get it there, or you can scan the QR code on the screen. So if you scan the QR code on the screen, you will be directed to a landing page. Please punch in your email address and I will send you a free financial newsletter talking about the equities markets and also wrapping up everything we talk about on the streams. So if you want to connect with us there, please scan the QR code and join us over at the Behind the Street newsletter. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can connect with us at Walks on Wall Street. And I wish you all a very happy, healthy, and safe week. We will see you right back here in the greatest city on earth, New York, tomorrow. So Laytha, thank you for joining. Cynthia Beal, thank you. Al J, Andy, Captain Super, Great Walk, NBF Forum, Lisa White, appreciate it. Al J, Mike R, Muhammad H, thank you. B1, 3T3, Tin Man, thank you. All of our moderators, The Mighty Bull, Laytha, Buy the Book, EBITDA, Mike C, Andy, Faith. And to the Mighty Bull, have a good night wherever you are, because there is always a bull market somewhere and you just need to know where to look. And I'll see everybody right back here tomorrow. Make it a good one, everybody. Make it a great Tuesday. See you tomorrow.